Two killed, scores injured in Ekiti bank robbery. INEC fixes November the 30th for Kogi West supplementary election. In international news, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu indicted for bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. And in sports, Igalo, Iwobi, Ndidi, Uzoho make 2019 CAF Best 11.
This is ANN News.
A security guard and a 5-year-old girl were killed on Thursday when an 8-member armed robber gang attacked a bank in Oye-Ekiti in Ekiti State. The robbers were said to have entered the bank by blowing up the security door with dynamite. Eyewitnesses say the heavily armed robbers shot into the air to scare away residents within the vicinity of the bank in order to operate freely. Customers and bank officials reportedly sustained various degrees of injuries. A police van the robbers hijacked and used to barricade the highway was set ablaze after the operation. Inspector General of Police Mohammed Adamu has ordered a thorough investigation into the armed robbery attack on the Oye-Ekiti branch of a New Generation bank. Ekiti State Commissioner of Police Azukwomba says there was close similarity between this bank robbery and the one 2 months ago at Isa-Ekiti. The robbers carted away more than 25 million naira and some foreign currencies. They also killed 2 persons, a policeman and a 7-year-old girl. Convener of the Revolution Now movement and publisher of Sahara Reporters, Omoyele Sowore, has sued the Department of State Services over his arrest and continued detention since August. Sowore is asking the court to order the DSS to pay him $500 million as general and aggravated damages for his detention and violation of his fundamental rights. Sowore is also asking the court for an order of perpetual injunction restraining the DSS from further violating his fundamental rights in any manner without justification. Sowore was arrested in Lagos in August for allegedly threatening public safety, peaceful coexistence, and social harmony in the country. The Independent National Electoral Commission has fixed next Saturday for the conduct of the supplementary and rerun elections in Kogi West Senatorial District and Ajaokuta Federal Constituency. INEC announced early on Friday via its verified Twitter handle at INEC Nigeria. The Commission says collation procedures at the supplementary polls would be in line with extant guidelines. INEC National Commissioner and Chairman of its Information and Voter Education Committee, Festus Okoye, made the announcements in a terse statement issued on Thursday night after its meeting, which held in Abuja. Supplementary polls were indicated by the collation returning officer for the senatorial district, affecting 20 registration areas, 53 polling units, and nearly 47,000 registered voters spread across 7 local government areas of the senatorial districts. National Bureau of Statistics has revealed in its latest reports Nigeria's gross domestic product grew by 2.28% in the third quarter. The growth rate represents the second highest quarterly rate recorded in 3 years. The GDP report released on Friday shows the average daily oil production in the third quarter was 2 million barrels per day. Nigeria's economic growth rose to the new level in the 3 months to the end of September after the production of its main export commodity crude oil rose to a more than 3-year high. Analysts say growth rates in Nigeria have been bouncing back this year, though from a low base after the oil sector switched off its negative performance in the first quarter. Oil production accounts for around 2/3 of government revenue and 90% of foreign exchange. The Statistics Office says the 2 million barrels per day crude production was the country's highest since the first quarter of 2016. Chief Economist for Africa and the Middle East at Standard Chartered Bank, Razia Khan, welcomed the oil sector performance but added it raises concerns that Nigeria could come under more pressure to adhere to its OPEC quota. The National Economic Council has finally resolved to reveal the status of the ownership structure of power distribution companies in the country. The review will be done by an ad hoc committee chaired by the governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai. Governors representing the 6 geopolitical zones and the board of the Niger Delta Power Holding Company will serve on the review committee. Imo State's Governor Emeka Ihedioha, who spoke on the resolutions of NEC, added that the National Council on Privatization and Bureau of Public Procurement would serve on the committee. El-Rufai once served as Director General of the Bureau of Public Enterprises, and the 6 governors are on the board of Niger Delta Power Holding Company. The Imo governor says representatives of the National Council on Privatization and the Bureau of Public Enterprises will serve on the committee as well. Senate President Ahmad Lawan has revealed there was no request before the Senate for the confirmation of Ibrahim Mago, acting chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Lawan explained this when he hosted the chairman of the Presidential Advisory Committee on Anti-Corruption, Issa Sage. The 8th Senate had rejected Mago's nomination as EFCC's substantive chairman because of security reports against him. Sage made a case for Mago's appointment as the substantive chairman of the commission. Lawan says this 9th Senate cannot do anything about Mago's confirmation until there is a request from the presidency. Sage says Mago has done magnificent work so far in the years he has been acting. He argues Mago would be a good companion to the legislature in achieving the aims of anti-corruption in the country if he is confirmed as substantive chairman. Coming up, African stories. Zimbabwe, EU in talks to improve relations that soared nearly 2 decades ago. And later, international news. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu indicted for bribery, fraud and breach of trust, throwing his political future into doubt.
Today, night don't reach for me to settle blessing. Blessing for you. When this girl first got this my shop called network. Now so on top of NTF4G phone. Now this girl put it press. I provoke. I know in short, in reach what time, eh? The ambulance make her tell her to make she mash her hat. Come up from my shop. And later I go realize, say, this girl go snap her. Put her for inside internet. They take her, they do adverts. Now I make customers that they come with my shop. Blessing, I want make you help me manage my shop number 2.
Maremo, but I think Nami and Blessing start work the same time.
Now you and Blessing start work the same time. Blessing, you better start on the T-shirt for top of your 4G MTN phone.
Business makes sense on top super fast and reliable MTN 4G. Join MTN, make you enjoy double data.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to African stories. The African Union is promoting manufacturing on the continent and encouraging businesses to venture into the export market through its Africa Industrialization Day initiative. The AU is facilitating discussions among African entrepreneurs at its headquarters in Ethiopia ahead of the African Continental Free Trade Area, an agreement that is expected to begin next year. Koleta Wanjohi reports from Addis Ababa.
Kenyan Amina Harsi is investing in a Ugandan sugar factory. The business, located in northern Uganda, will begin production in April. It will produce 165,000 tons of sugar per day.
In 1 year, that we will be having a circulation of money in northern Uganda about 143 billion. This is a place there was no money, and if you look at mine, there will be also other services. People will want now to uplift their standard of living, so there will be houses being built because there is money now, but before there was no money there.
Amina is attending the Africa Industrialization Week in Addis Ababa. The focus this year is how Africans can increase manufacturing and export more within the continent. The African Union wants to encourage more manufacturers like Amina, who plans to export sugar to Congo and South Sudan.
I've just been here and I've been told that food which has been imported in Africa is 50 billion When we have all the rivers, we have all the lakes, we have very many unutilized land, and we are still importing. It is just shame.
Santa Joyce Laker heads 4,000 sugarcane growers supplying Amina's factory. She says local people will be key to growing business as the continent enters a new era of industrialization.
We are the backbone of African nation. The moment government and these institutions bring us on the drawing board, trust me, Africa will be a different continent. But they have left out the consumers and the suppliers of the raw material. That's why our growth is very slow, because the big bulk of the community are left out.
Entrepreneurs, though, are encouraged by discussions at this event, especially those looking to export. Irene Momo has been producing child skincare products for 5 years, and her target market is China. She has changed her packaging 3 times to meet the expectations of the market there.
Certification, of course, from Kenya is different from certification in China. So we are working on that. The other challenge is the IPs in the 2 countries. I have an IP on my product in Kenya. We also need to do an IP, and we have actually started the process of the intellectual property rights in China. Number 3, branding is critical.
According to the United Nations Industrialization Development Organization, there are at least 12 million young entrants like this in the market every year. The entrepreneurs attending the Africa Industrialization Week say for them to grow their businesses, trading across borders must be simplified and barriers to it reduced. They also want to see an investment in the digital economy, which will help improve productivity. Those like Irene, who have already experienced the demands of the international market, are focusing on perfecting their production to ensure that they compete with other products globally.
Zimbabwe is holding high-level talks with the European Union, the EU officials, in an effort to improve relations after almost 20 years. The relations soared under former President Robert Mugabe's government. The EU imposed sanctions in 2002 on individuals and businesses because of human rights abuses and a controversial land reform program. Current President Emmerson Mnangagwa has pledged to repair diplomatic ties. During the talks, the EU is expected to raise concerns about growing intimidation, harassment, and physical assault on human rights activists, trade unions, civil society representatives, and opposition politicians. The talks among ministers could also lead to the resumption of financial assistance to Zimbabwe, a country in serious economic crisis. In a joint statement issued after a meeting with Zimbabwean ministers, the EU reiterated its commitments to support political and economic reforms, including the fight against corruption. The European Union said on Thursday there is need for national dialogue to resolve what it calls an increasingly deteriorating democratic space in Zimbabwe. Last month, President Emmerson Mnangagwa described EU and US sanctions on Zimbabwe as a cancer sapping the economy. Somalia has hosted the country's first technology summit. More than 5,000 people attended the event, including its experts, entrepreneurs, tech companies, and investors. Reporter Abdulaziz Bilal went along to check it out and found this report.
Summit brings together IT experts, entrepreneurs, tech companies, and investors. Now in its second year, IRIS Hub is hosting the Mogadishu Tech Summit, the biggest tech event in the country. Hodan Osman, a lecturer and a research fellow at the Zhejiang Normal University in China, was one of the main speakers. Her presentation focused on the growth of the ICT sector in China and lessons Somalia can learn from the Far East.
The world came up with telecom industry, for example, right? But they were able to enhance upon it, and now they are the leading forces in technologies such as 5G. Now, we can learn from countries like this, to learn from the innovations and technological advancement from other people and adapt them to our own societies, invest in our education, invest in our infrastructure, and then advance ourselves in a very smart and consistent way.
The Tech Summit allows local startups to present their latest products and services from different sectors. University students also took part in the annual event, pitching new ideas organizers say can help address the country's multifaceted challenges. Awad Osman is the CEO of IRIS Hub, a Mogadishu-based business incubator that has helped encourage the growth of startups across the country.
Currently, the access of internet and also co-working spaces and incubators are increasing. So this helps startups and entrepreneurs to access all those three services in the hubs. So this will increase the creativity of the Somali entrepreneurs so they can create solutions for problems that are already existing in the housing sector, problems that exist in governance, the problems that exist in accessing goods online, and also making sure that, to increase the productivity of companies in Somalia.
Authorities say the ICT industry has enormous potential. In 2017, the country's President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo signed into law a National Communications Act that aims to establish the legal, regulatory and institutional framework for the country's thriving telecom sector. Local banks and other telecom companies have also vowed to support local startups with loans, a move many say will help tackle unemployment in a country with a vibrant young population.
When we return, international news. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu indicted for bribery. And later, sports. Igalo, Iwobi, Indidi, Uzoho make 2019 CAF Best 11. Welcome back. This is CNN News. On the international front, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been indicted on charges of bribery, fraud and breach of trust. The country's Attorney General Avichar Mendelblit announced on Thursday the 70-year-old will be formally charged in 3 corruption cases. Never before in the nation's history has a sitting prime minister been indicted. Stephanie Freid reports.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu indicted on Thursday evening on counts of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. He is the first sitting prime minister in Israel's history to be indicted while in office. What happens next? Because Israel has been stymied, there hasn't been an effective government that's been working for or in Israel for almost a year. What happens to a prime minister who's been indicted? Well, there's no precedent in Israel for this sort of case. So legally, he doesn't have to step down. And based on what he told the nation after the indictment was handed down, he defended himself. Bibi Netanyahu talked about all that he's done for the country. He accused the legal system of going after him and of targeting him illegally. The police, the investigators, and on and on. It doesn't look like Benjamin Netanyahu intends to step down. But of course, these are hearings. He could face up to 10 years in jail. The speculation is that he will seek a plea bargain or that he will look for immunity going forward. There will be eventually new elections or nomination of another candidate, and possibly his own party members may say that he's too much of a liability and oust him. But the news here in Israel is that the first ever sitting prime minister is being indicted on criminal charges.
United States investigators concluded a momentous 3-day stretch of public impeachment hearings before the inquiry takes a week-long break for the U.S. Thanksgiving holiday. There are no hearings scheduled beyond that as of now, and on Thursday, 2 witnesses described their intimate views of an attempted quid pro quo. Dr. Fiona Hill, former top Russia expert at the White House, said President Trump's demands for Ukraine to announce investigations into former Vice President Joe Biden amounted to a domestic political errand that diverged from American foreign policy goals. David Holmes, a top aide in the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, announced or added detail to a now infamous call he overheard between Trump and Ambassador Gordon Sondland. He said Sondland told him President Trump doesn't care about Ukraine, but about the investigations he wanted of the Bidens. The House Intelligence Committee now moves forward without testimony by some of the key players in the drama. The committee believes it has enough evidence to impeach President Trump on a party-line vote in the House. Havana, which was declared one of the world's new 7 wonder cities in 2014, is now showcasing its best side and colors on its 500th birthday. The Cuban capital celebrated with festivities and a cultural gala at the Capitol building, attended by thousands of guests. Luis Chirino reports. Up next, sports. Igalo, Iwobi, Ndidi, Uzoho make 2019 CAF Best 11. Welcome back. This is ANN News and Sports. Nigeria former internationals Odion Igalo, Alex Iwobi, Wilfred Ndidi and Francis Uzoho have been shortlisted for the 2019 CAF Best 11. Shanghai Greenland sensual striker Igalo delivered impressive showings at this year's Africa Cup of Nations in Egypt. Leicester City combative midfielder Ndidi has been a consistent performer for both club and country, finishing at the 2018-2019 league top tackler. Alex Iwobi and AC Omania goalkeeper Uzoho also played key roles for the Super Eagles in Egypt and will hope to make the final team. The CAF Best 11 will be announced in a ceremony in January. Tottenham's new manager Jose Mourinho says he will not make the same managerial mistakes as Spurs. The Portuguese replaced Mauricio Pochettino on Wednesday, ending an 11-month spellout of the management following his sacking by Manchester United. Mourinho's time at Manchester City came to an end last December, with the club 19 points behind Premier League leaders Liverpool. He had also reportedly fallen out with Paul Pogba and was criticized by fans towards the end of his tenure for playing dull defensive football. Mourinho's departure from Old Trafford continued his run of having never completed 4 consecutive seasons in charge of a club.